Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, babies. Hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone. What's up? Happy Wednesday.
What's going on?
What's up? I'm feeling pandemic times. I'm back in my little shelter in my house today because I'm just not feeling great and I don't feel like exposing Callow to it. Because I already kind of did it yesterday, and I just decided to stay home.
I appreciate
no COVID,
that.
promise, no COVID. I don't have anything. I don't have anything bad. I just feel like crap, but apparently the whole area does. Like, I've seen all these reports of like some kind of crazy respiratory wave that's like crashing our hospitals these days. And everybody I know sick, and I heard around the office everybody's getting sick, so I'm not alone here. Apparently it's just kind of going around. So be safe out there, everybody. Be safe out there.
I just want to say this is one of the few times where, not few times, but one of the things that I'm loving about life right now is I do live by myself. I only see you. And for the most part, I keep to myself. So I'm actually very, and by the way, I'm like eating healthy and keeping on top of all that. So like, I'm very at peace with how my life is right now, so I don't have to worry about any of that because I got like 20 family members coming in for the Dolphins game this weekend, so I cannot be sick from this point moving forward, and with the whole 10 o'clock and 10:30 puck drops happening with the Caps. So, yeah.
I like your attitude about all that because that initial description sounded like I'm at rock bottom. The only person I see is you. I live by myself, and the only reason why I see anybody is because they like the Dolphins. You know, it's like, oh, okay.
No. I'm embracing living by myself for the first time in my life. So
that's right.
I'm enjoying it. So I'm
first time in your life. What are you talking about?
What do you mean?
You've never been married? You've always had a roommate or something along the way?
Yeah, I either lived with my parents or I lived with two other people at one time, then three other people, then my now ex-girlfriend, and now I live by myself. So yeah, this is the first time I've ever lived by myself. So yeah.
So you love it. It's great, huh?
I've embraced it.
Never going back.
No. I'll say this. I've embraced it probably the last like month-ish because it is an adjustment. Like literally I have never done it before. So, but now I've hit my stride is what I'm telling you. So like I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I'm walking a lot more places. I'm more in the neighborhood now. Yes, I'm
do whatever you want, whenever you want.
Yeah. You kind of realize like your schedule is your schedule. Like you can do whatever the hell you want. Like I'm just saying, I've never had that construct. So yeah, it's been nice to embrace that. And while everybody's getting sick, I am not getting sick. So far.
So good. Yeah. So far, so good. Yeah. So far, so good. Oh, well, that's good
news.
Look at this.
Emergency in the studio. So I'm hoping I don't get sick.
Big 2024 for you coming up. You can't wait. You got a full year ahead of you. Yeah. Full year ahead of you. All right. Yeah, I haven't lived alone in, God, I can't remember. I don't know.
Nebraska.
I can't remember. No, when I first moved back, I was single. So I don't know. For a few years there, I was in apartments by myself, and then I met my then wife, and then we ended up moving in together before we got married. So it's been like 20 plus years since I've lived alone.
There you go.
I don't know if I could go back now. Now I'd be like, oh boy, like a little too much time on my hands.
Right.
I don't know if might not go as well as the way you're describing it. I have a feeling I would turn into like a shut-in, and probably not be as hygienic as I am. So it probably wouldn't go very well. Yeah, right. It wouldn't go very well. It could slide the wrong way for me. So like, I'm gonna stay in what I got going on right now because this is working out for me. So I'm gonna stay in this one.
Fair enough.
All right. Meantime, so I'm glad I've got HQ Pandemic Land still operational here to do this. Because I wasn't coming in today. I just got like a head cold on top of head colds, which is better than what I've heard is going around here. So for everybody else, hopefully everybody gets better and be safe out there because it sounds like it's really going around like a wave around here. So everybody's getting it to some degree. Yeah. So just be careful. All right, let's get into what's going on today, which is Aaron Rodgers' dream of proving scientists wrong has begun once again today with the news that he was cleared to return to practice, not for contact. And it gives him, because he came back off of IR, the rule is in the NFL, you've got a 3-week window of which you must be activated to play. Otherwise, you revert back to season-ending IR. So it allows you to practice, not be part of the active roster, but you get 3 weeks to figure it out. And at that point, with only a few games left, if he wasn't going to come back by the Commanders game, why would he come back at all anyway? And it's not happening this week because he's not even cleared for contact. So they're just opening the window to get him jogging around a little bit or whatever it is. but I guess the door is open for him to play, albeit he admitted on McAfee yesterday, if they're out of it, that he's not going to do this. Like he didn't explicitly say that, but their season hinges on them winning the next couple of games.
Right.
And if they don't, then I don't expect him to play. But if they do, then he may try to pull full miracle worker because the window ends on the Commanders game, which means he has to make the choice that week. So it isn't we'll see if he plays or not. It's that one or bust for the season. So we may get him, we may not. We'll see what happens this week.
I'm leaning towards no here. Like I think this is the same realm as them saying, "Oh, he might come back this year," as, "Hey, let's get morale back up. Let's distract everybody from the fact that this season has been an abject failure," and the fact that sports radio on the ESPN national feed on Monday, I think it was Monday, was literally, "Hey, what's been the worst decision since January 1st of 2023? And the Jets not having a backup quarterback was among the discussion on not only there, but also in New York. So I'm just saying.
I got to push back on that one, but go ahead. Finish your thought. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I get that. But it's not really about the opinion. It's the fact that everybody's still talking about that call. So I think this is just another. It's the Jets deflecting everything to, hey, look, he's practicing now. Everybody go pay attention to A-Raj. I think that's what's happening here. I'm with you. Like I actually don't disagree with it. I think Wilson being the backup was, like fine. Like if here's the thing. It's not unlike Howell and Brissett. I've said this. If Howell goes down, the season was probably going to be over with regardless, just of how all the eggs were in one basket. It's the same thing with Rodgers exponentially more, where if he went down, the season was going to end, and it happened. Like Wilson was not ready to go, and it was going to happen. So yeah, like I said, the opinion on that is I don't care, but the Jets I think are just deflecting on this because I'm sure the heat is just ratcheting up there so much.
And I don't want to make a big deal of this, but on the argument that the Jets didn't secure a backup quarterback as a backup plan here, people seem to have forgotten that Zach Wilson is the number 2 overall pick. Like he's in the third year of his rookie contract, and because of the way he played in year 2, was untradeable. So what were they going to? You wanted them to cut him, that's the argument here. You wanted them to cut him to pick up a more expensive backup quarterback to back up Aaron Rodgers, who you just spent whatever you spent to get him to show up there in the first place. Like, I don't know, man. Like this is like in the weeds stuff for WFAN that I can't get into, but it's just, this is the part of like sports management when I hear fans yell about this that I go, what are you talking about? Like they had the number 2 overall pick. If he the plan was not for him to play, but he should be able to if he had to. He's the number 2 overall pick. Like, why would you want to go get another backup? That's why they let Mike effing White go, because they couldn't afford to have 3 quarterbacks on their roster. Yeah. So that's why they let him go. So, I mean, like that, whenever I hear this, they didn't get a backup quarterback. What do you mean they didn't get a backup quarterback? They have the number 2 overall pick in his third year on this team. What are you talking about?
Sure, but you know how this goes locally, though. Like, we can talk about this for a little bit, and then we jump back into the Commanders. The conversation evolves so much more locally. So that's why they're so hung up on it. Like, but plan A was plan A. There was no plan B. It was Rodgers or bust. I mean, like, so what, you wanted them to go spend $10 million on Brissett too? Like, that's what you wanted them to do? Because what viable backup quarterback are you talking about that doesn't cost money? Like, what are you talking? You just paid whatever it cost to get Rodgers. You have this guy on a rookie guy. There are plenty of things to complain about with the Jets for sure, but that's not one of them, in my opinion. That's not one of them. All right, let me give you this other quote. I asked this question early during Hard Knocks, and I ask it in the middle of the season after it appears that this isn't being handled very well. And granted, most teams don't recover from their starting quarterback who's a star getting hurt for the bulk of, if not all of a season. So this is not unusual that their record sucks off of what happened. However, the way the team handles it is important. And go look at Minnesota for that matter. Like Minnesota, who, yes, have come back a little bit here, but are 500, with how many different quarterbacks are they trying to go through, getting a guy off the street, keeping it together. I think it says a lot about Kevin O'Connell.
and what he's got going on in that locker room. And frankly, their defense isn't nearly as good as a team like the Jets. The Jets have a playoff caliber defense. They should be able to do enough on the other side of the ball just to be competitive in these games. And frankly, they haven't been recently because their offense is this woefully bad. So I'll ask the same question because he said something again today with Robert Saleh. Is this guy a good head coach? Because their record, it's easy to blame the Rodgers injury and go, anybody who had this happen to them, their record wouldn't be that good and all the expectations are out the window. I agree with all that. But the really good head coaches figure out a way to keep their teams competitive, especially when they have an edge on one side of the ball. And this team hasn't been able to do that. And then he said this today, and I've seen this mistake 8,000 times, where he said, if Rodgers wants to play, he will be allowed to, contingent upon being cleared by the doctors, which to me goes, I saw this with Gilbert Arenas. I've seen this with RG3. I've seen this with others where sometimes these people need to be protected from themselves. And Robert Saleh is the ultimate decision maker, not Aaron Rodgers. So you know what? Maybe if he did indeed, and I believe he tore his Achilles tendon and he is trying to come back from something way prematurely from when anyone has ever done it in a season where at best they're going to sneak into the playoffs. And even that seems unlikely at this point. Be the responsible leader and don't let this happen. And he's not even doing that. He's been too slow to move away from Wilson because it's been, not good. He is saying things like, I will succumb to whatever Aaron Rodgers wants without being the head coach of the team. And they're not winning games that they could win. I'll turn the Dolphins, forget the Dolphins one, but there's been a lot of very close games that if they had a semblance of an offense, they would have been probably have a different record and we could have a different conversation about this. Yeah. So I'll ask the same thing I've asked all along. Is he a good coach? Because I think the Jets need to make up their minds about that before they go into next season when Rodgers will actually come back and hopefully, for his sake, for the team's sake, for the NFL's sake, is healthy again. I think this is an open question about him now. Forget should they have gotten a backup quarterback. Do they have the right head coach? Because you're seeing adverse conditions, and explain to me how he's handling it very well, because I don't see it. I really don't.
I mean, I'll disagree with you in that it's a different situation when you get a guy like Rodgers there. Like you have to secede some power because getting Rodgers into your building was going to take that. It was signing Alan Lazard. It was signing his boy Cobb. It was like doing whatever you had to do to get him in there, and so. Now he has to kind of just listen. So to me, it sounds like Rodgers does want to play. It doesn't mean, though, that he's absolutely going to get cleared, though. Like, that's the other part about this. Yes, they opened the practice window. It doesn't mean he's going to be cleared for game action. Like, that's another hurdle here. And if it's Rodgers saying he's fine, he still has to listen to whatever the hell the doctors have to say. And I mean, maybe that's the other thing here is maybe he has been cleared. And Saleh's going, all right, dude, it's on you. Like, we can't prevent you if you are actually cleared to do so. I think Saleh's the right guy. It's just when you have a literal Hall of Fame quarterback on your roster that you had to, give and take a few things to get him to come to your team because your franchise has been irrelevant for a long time. I think that's the type of situation you get in here. And like all those other quarterbacks you named, like RG3 and stuff, the same thing happened here. He had more power than he should have had. And
this is
it
my
leads
point,
to some
though.
awkward situations.
Yes, this is my point, though. They're allowing the player to dictate everything, and sometimes they're not their own best advocates in that case. And this is where the organization needs to step in. And I saw this twice with prominent players. Like, the reality is, if I'm a Jets fan, this is what I want to happen. He doesn't play again this year. If we make the playoffs, great. But he doesn't play again this year. That's it. And we work towards getting him fully healthy for next year because that's what's important now. And I don't want to hear it that the organization is coddling him to allow him to do so. What point would he prove by coming back and playing for a like they're fighting for the 7 seed. What point would he be making by coming back? Don't you think the risk is too high for the reward here? Like, why in the world would you jeopardize potentially what he's got going on in the limited future he has with your organization for a game with the Commanders that might not mean anything for them getting into the playoffs? Like, what exactly is he proving? Like, this is some personal thing against American science that he wants to prove he can do something that scientists said he couldn't do? Well, that's not in the best interest of the Jets. So why in the world would you let him do it? Like, someone needs to step up and just say, this isn't happening. Like, we're happy he's back. We want him around. He's part of our future. Can't wait to get him back, but this isn't happening. Like, we can't let this happen. If they let him walk out, this is what the Commanders did, the Redskins did with RG3. They let him go out there prematurely because he wanted to, and look what ended up happening is his career got derailed for no good reason whatsoever. And anybody, you don't have to be an orthopedic surgeon to see, that guy shouldn't have been on the field that day when he was running around with his knee like that. This is a crazy thing to do. I've been saying all along, I don't believe it because I didn't think they'd go through with it. And I'm like, he's just playing with the media. He keeps telling them I'm going to come back. Well, today they opened a window for him to come back, which means it's real. It's real that they're talking about doing this. I don't know, man. Like, I'd like to see a little leadership out of it. If I'm a Jets fan, I'd like to see a little leadership out of that organization to step up and say, like, we're glad he's back on the field with us. We're going to be very careful with him. The doctors are who are in control here. Like, not him. The doctors are in control here. And we, for the sake of our future of our organization, because of what we gave up to get him, we are not going to jeopardize his health and career to come back and play in a game on Christmas Eve that may not matter. Like, that's so that he can prove a point on McAfee? That's stupid. Why would we do that?
I mean, it could very well just be also a thing of if you get him to practice again, and at least if he shows something there, you don't have to exactly put him in a game either. I mean, that's the other part about this. Like, right. You could just have him, like, see if he still has the chemistry, see how he looks, make sure he looks good with the receivers that they've got. I don't know. Like, that could also be another factor. Let's be honest here, too. With the games that are left, it would be the Commanders, at the Browns, and then at the Patriots. If he plays against the Commanders, everybody's going to
win.
Right.
They could win all
definitely
of them.
win.
I agree.
Yeah. And so, like, maybe their mindset is, hey, if we beat, they get the Falcons this week, and then they host the Texans. They host both of those games. So it's both of them, and then at the Dolphins. Maybe they're thinking if they can win the next two, and then the Dolphins game happens, and then they're staring at the Commanders, Browns, and Patriots. Maybe they thinking that the thinking is, though, if they win 5 straight somehow, some way, they could possibly make a run. I mean, I don't see it happening, but who knows? Crazier things have happened.
It's nuts. They're 15th in the AFC right now. Like the way it's nuts. It's nuts to do. It's nuts to think it. It's nuts to do it. They're not going to win their division. That's not going to happen. Like, so the only road is to sneak it as the 7 seed, which, to their point, they're 2 games back of.
Yes.
But 2 games back of,
like, with 5 teams or 6 teams or whoever's got it.
There's 2 teams that are 1 game back of, 3 teams that are basically essentially tied for that spot. So, like, they got to leapfrog all of these other teams to do it, and at the same time put him at risk. Like, I don't know, man. Like, it just doesn't read as a good idea. That's all. It just doesn't read as a good idea.
They're not, they're not going to let him just do this to do it, though. He's had to have passed certain benchmarks to get to this point. Like, that's the other part here. Like, I doubt.
I do feel like, though, that his whole motivation is to prove science wrong, and that just, to me, is the wrong thing to try to do in this scenario. If the Jets had been 7-4 even without him, I'd go, all right, let's, I'll buy into, because they might win their division or might have a 1 seed or a 2 seed, and that'd be a crazy thing. But at 4-7. Even putting him out on the practice field seems crazy to me right now. Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that?
I mean, that could be the same thing, though, as I mentioned, though. With practice, he's not getting hit. So for 3 weeks, you could, at bare minimum, have him run the offense. And like I said, that probably does wonders for morale, and it gets people talking. And as I said, it's all mainly what I think is a distraction to make sure everyone kind of stops focusing on Saleh. Does he get fired? Did not having a backup quarterback ruin the season? Like, I think the Jets have deflected pretty well in the past. This seems to be one of those deflections overall, at least in my opinion.
Here's how Saleh comes off to me. I'm advocating firing anybody. I'm asking questions. That's all. Because I said this during Hard Knocks when I watched, which I thought was one of the best versions of that show in a while. It was really the Aaron Rodgers show. But Saleh was prominently in it. And you know how I am with impressions. Like, I don't know the guy. I've never been around him. I don't really know him. But I watched the show and I watched him and I went, okay. He clearly relates to the players, so he's kind of modern in that way, that he's, younger, clearly relates to them. He has given them an environment that I think feels very modern and comfortable. So on that level, A+, check off the box. Is he a really good coach? I don't know. Like, it's hard to tell. He's got some interesting speeches, but like the offense that they have put out there is pretty terrible. And amazingly, not unlike really with the Commanders, they got a lot of explosive talent over there. So even without their starting quarterback, I mean, I don't know. Like, shouldn't it be a little bit better than this? Like, just a little bit? And I know he's a defensive coach and all of that stuff, but I don't know. Like, I came out of it with my impression was, I'm not sure about. You remember I was talking about it. I'm like, I'm not sure about him. Like, I think he's very relatable to the players, which is fine. And that's been kind of a modern, thing that's happened, that you get these younger voices that relate differently to the players. That's fine. And that seems to be good. But from is he the motivational X's and O's button down operation? I didn't get that vibe from him. So I actually feel like this is an interesting test case for them and him. And maybe he feels like maybe he's going along with this because he's feeling the heat and he feels like I need to get this guy back and I need to throw him out there because he's feeling the heat a little. Maybe that's what it is, which is if you're doing this out of your own self-interest, then you don't have the organization's goals at heart either. If I'm him and I feel safe moving forward, I think I'm putting a stop to this Rodgers stuff other than to let it be a media distraction. But that's better all it better be if I'm him, because if he then leans on him and the guy gets hurt again, well, then that was a selfish move on his part too. And so let's see how it plays out.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of this too could just be like maybe ownership. Maybe Johnson told Saleh, like, I understand what's going on here. Just get through the season. Like, I think everyone does kind of realize it. It's hard to week to put it like that, but it could have also just been like, hey, we know you're in a weird spot. Do what you need to do to get through the season. If Rodgers wants to come back, we'll let him try. And if he can somehow go over all of these benchmarks and hit all of those, goalposts, so to speak, and then make his way back, more power to him. But maybe it's also a situation where maybe he's not as buttoned up because maybe everyone just understands the circumstances within the building. Not. Of course, the media is going to freak the F out because it's New York. But I'm just saying maybe within the building, they all just kind of know what the score is. And honestly, if that is the case, it's kind of refreshing because I always hate that too when your season literally hinges on one player and they go down and then things spiral. You fire the coach. Well, it's like, of course things were going to spiral when you put it all on one player. Like, we're going to talk about it later. I watched the first 2 episodes of Hard Knocks for the Dolphins last night. But when we watched Hard Knocks for the Jets all summer, it was Rodgers. It was all Rodgers. Even the defensive players were commenting on Rodgers. So when it literally is hinging, and that's all the players will talk about and they won't shut up about, of course, when a guy like that goes down, it's going to spiral out of control. So maybe, just maybe, when he went down, maybe New York ownership went to Saleh and said, you know what? We know this is going to suck for the rest of the season. Do what you can, get through it. But maybe they assured him, as long as things don't go haywire, you're going to be fine. You'll get another shot at it next year. Maybe, just maybe. That's what happened.
Maybe. And listen, I subscribe to this. Like, teams have PR staffs because you have to supply the media something to talk about.
Yes.
This is a heck of a way to get them to go run in the corner and sniff something that doesn't really matter and stay away from everything else. So, if that's what they've been doing and they've been using it as a ploy to get the media off their back just in general or as often as they can, then I applaud them for looking at it that way. Or they could just be so Rodgers-centric because they're so desperate for anything that's what's happening too. I don't really know until we get to the end. One other thing real quickly before I take a break, because I saw this one too, and it's another one that I just can't believe would be true, but Caleb Williams did literally say he's describing his decision to go into the NFL draft as a, quote, game time decision, and qualified it. He has to make a choice in January, and qualified it as it's the first time in his life because, USC's season totally spiraled. They lost like 5 of 7 down the stretch. He said it's the first time in his life that he's ever been in a position where he's playing for a team that wasn't involved in going to the playoffs. And he's like, doesn't know what to do with them. So basically, I think it's like affected him a little bit, which part of me goes, dude, you don't play defense. And so we all get it.
Yeah.
We totally get it. Like, their defense is woefully inept in a conference where offense is at a premium in general with teams like Washington and Oregon and others. So, like, I'm not surprised you guys ended up with the record that you did if he wasn't going to be totally otherworldly, whatever. Everybody gets it. And everybody still, from what I can tell from all the people I talk to and all the draft boards I read, everyone still thinks he's the number 1 pick. Like, no one thinks anything's changed with it. He's not going to win the Heisman, but no one thinks anything's changed about that. So I think what is he even thinking about? I mean, are you serious? Like, what do you even think? Is he waiting to see who has the pick so he can? Is that what it is?
This is just one of the dumb things that happens every December. I think everyone kind of forgets. It happens every December that a quarterback says this. And then what happens is in January, once the bowl game is passed, an agent goes to them and says, yeah, buddy, you have to wait another year to get that $500 million contract or whatever the hell it's going to be. This happens every year. This is just him talking out of his you-know-what. This is exactly what this is. Everyone does this.
Though.
Even Joe Burrow did this and eventually still came out. Like, it's
he did, but then it became obvious, actually, which is where I think Caleb's family went with it when they started talking about it, is I think it's real that Burrow actually didn't want to be drafted by the Bengals, but found out that he was going to be. There was nothing he could do about it. Finally settled on it, and it's turned out to be great. It has turned out to be great. I think Williams' family, like, remember those interviews? Like, when this all started early, I'm like, yeah, he's crazy for talking about this. But then, and I'm like, and he's not going to do it because it's too much money on the line. You have to start the clock. Start your NFL, especially if you're the number 1 pick. You have to start the clock. I don't care who picks you. You have to start the clock. Or you could, this day and age, you could demand to be traded. Someone will trade for you.
Yeah,
like the number 1 pick, of course. But, like, they started this early, and it does feel like it is a little, his feelings or his family's feelings are a little contingent on who has that pick, which is unknown at this point.
No, because if Joe Burrow had actually been the same hype level as he was, as Caleb Williams was, he would have said the same crap. They would have they would have asked him those questions.
After that season, though, it became apparent he was going to be the number 1 pick, and it became obvious. Like, they have that LSU team might be the greatest college football team ever. So, like, and it became obvious that he was going to be the number 1 pick. And remember, his dad did weird interviews about the Bengals,
right?
And then he was kind of wonky about the whole thing.
That's what I'm getting at with the
history. Was clearly about the organization. It had nothing to do with not wanting to be number 1 or coming out.
No,
he also was a senior. He had no choice. Yes. He was coming out either way.
Right. That's what I'm getting at it's with the history, though. Like, Caleb Williams, we all said he was going to be the number 1 overall pick in August, over the summer, is what I'm getting at here.
Burrow, and as far as I can tell, he still is.
Right. Burrow was never asked about that because he was never pegged to be the number 1 overall pick. I think he was probably graded as a first-round pick, but nobody was asking him that in August. No one even knew who he was in August. They knew he was a transfer from Ohio State and that LSU was going to be good, but no one expected that. So that's why we didn't hear about it with Burrow until literally, his dad said something dumb like that. And you're right. He had no choice, actually. He had to come out. So there was no choice there. Caleb Williams is coming out. An agent's going to get in his ear and go, dude. Also, here's the other thing, too. He was with Burrow's case, he was going to be the first overall pick to the Bengals. With Williams' case, he could go to the Bears. If you're going to be the quarterback in Chicago, I've said this before, if you're going to a market like that, whether they're really good or not, or of course they're going to be terrible, but they're getting that first-round pick from Carolina. Like, I don't know, man. I would say you can be the quarterback in Chicago and turn that franchise around. You're set for life, no matter what happens to your career, if you're good. So I think that's the difference.
I agree. There. I also think if it's the Bears, if he wants to go there, great. And if he doesn't, I think the Bears can say to him, listen, man, don't make a big stink of it. We'll trade you for 4 first-round picks.
Could be that,
because that's what they're going to get.
Could be that, too. Yeah.
That's what they're going to get from a team in the top 5. Like, that's what they're going to get. Yep. All right, let's take a quick break. Bram and Callow, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. Hey, you're lucky you're not sick. Oh, man, you got 10:30 puck drops. Oh, you can't get sick now, Callow. You don't have time for that.
That's what I'm saying, man.
This is a long week for that. You can't have that. You can't have this Sharks, Kings, whatever's going on. 10:30 puck. They turn around and do this and be sick. You won't get through all that. So I'm doing you a favor staying away from you today.
Oh no, I was fine with that. Especially as your boss now. Yeah, I was completely fine with that. But this is how this week looks. 10:30 puck drop tonight. 10 o'clock puck drop tomorrow. Family comes in Friday. Family all day Saturday. 10 o'clock puck drop Vegas. Sunday, Dolphins, Commanders. Our party bus leaves at 9 o'clock from Bethesda. So I'm just saying, I got from here on out, I'm hitting the ground running. I cannot get sick. So yes, stay away until you feel better.
That's a good ESPN 630 giveaway. Ride the Callow party bus to Commanders Dolphins. Got any extra seats on that bus?
Maybe. I don't know. I wasn't in charge of that. I was in charge of getting tickets. That's what I was in charge of. So that's
get a couple people to get rally captain and toothpick on the bus with you to take a ride over there. Right. But as I think these are all South Floridians, right? That are popping up here that want to see the Dolphins. Actually,
seven or eight people from Florida. We're from all over the place: Jersey, Florida, Georgia. My parents now in the Carolinas. So yeah, I mean it's all over the place. It's a mishmash.
I hadn't heard this yet. I saw this in I get inundated with all sorts of statistical analysis as I get ready for the games. And I saw this line. Have you heard the Dolphins called the greatest show on surf yet? Have you seen that?
Oh, no. That's great, though. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Somewhat. I'm not going to take credit for it because it was in like a packet from the NFL that puts out with all the stats from all the games, and they called it the greatest show on surf. And, laugh if you must, but they're actually trending towards doing things that haven't happened since the merger. They have the number one pass offense and the number two rush offense. That hadn't happened since the 1952 Cleveland Browns. So they have the most yards per play, or second most yards per play of the Super Bowl era outside of greatest show on turf, 2000 Rams. So greatest show on surf. They keep doing what they're doing this year. I think that might stick. I was surprised I hadn't heard that anywhere yet. I was wondering if I just missed it with that one. But that was a pretty good coined one. That was pretty good.
So what you're saying is, what could go wrong on Sunday? Well,
what could be good?
What could go wrong? I mean, best rush offense or second best rush offense and best pass offense. What could go wrong?
We've never had a 2,000-yard receiver. That's a possibility this year, too. Tyreek Hill is on pace for that. So that's a possibility. If he has 105 yards of this weekend, which if you've seen what number one receivers have done to the Commanders defense this year, seems probable. If he gets 105 yards, he will be ahead of Calvin Johnson's pace for most yards ever through 12 games of an NFL season. So that's the stuff that they're doing right now. So I know it's ugly. It's really ugly. I haven't watched a lot of tape of them recently. Their offense has actually slowed down significantly since the first 6 weeks of the season, but they're still metrically ahead of everybody by a lot, by a lot. They've got crazy, Raheem Mostert's having a crazy year. So is Tyreek Hill. So is Tua. Nutty years. So we'll get into that. Let's see. College football playoff rankings came out again because Michigan played Ohio State and because one of them had to lose and because there is an undefeated team left. Florida State did beat Florida. That put them back in the top four. So it's Georgia, Michigan, Washington, who's undefeated, and Florida State. That's the four. Things could change this weekend, but if all of them win, it would, if Georgia beats Alabama, they're definitively in. If Michigan beats Iowa, they're definitively in. If Washington beats Oregon again and stays undefeated, they're definitively in. The only one that I think you're going to hear an argument about is if Texas knocks off Oklahoma State Big 12 championship game and have beaten Alabama, and Florida State's without their quarterback, even if Florida State wins the ACC championship game, I think you might see an argument there. That's the one. Yep. And that's the one people are seemingly at least arguing about. And I was listening to Carlin and Joe driving around earlier today, and they were kind of describing it as the ACC's a weak conference this year. Take that into account, let alone the fact that they lost their quarterback. So realistically, what are they? And then they're pointing out that the point spreads that are already being put out in, what would be the matchups right now if they were this way. Georgia would be a massive favorite over them, 15 to 20 point favorite over them. And to Nick Saban's point a year ago where he was like, what would Vegas say if we're playing them as opposed to this team? So I don't know that they deserve the hate, but I understand that without the quarterback, it is hard to make the case that they should be in definitively over Oregon, Alabama, or Texas, or Ohio State, frankly, at this point, but that's where we are.
Yeah,
and
right.
now that they are where they are, if they beat Louisville, how do you take them out?
Yeah.
Like I don't know how you would.
Well, and it's also, you know what it's going to be too. It's if they beat Louisville and if they beat them handily. Like that's the other thing that happens here. Like it's the one thing we have to like put together the formula, but that is the one thing that they do take into account, even if they don't think that you belong with some of the upper echelon teams. They do always kind of reward teams that blow out teams when we're in one of these scenarios. So I'm going to guess they're going to dial up a bunch of stuff to try to run the score up, you know, if they can. But you and I both know, like, that's the only way to kind of reverse and flip the script here. I'll hear all the arguments out, but not unlike last year when Saban was like, we'd be favored in the matchups in the college football playoff. They still didn't do it. So in my opinion, it's got to be all about that game. It means that they got to score like a bunch of points on them. It's the only way I see it happening.
Here's the other thing that I think is the case now. Like, and I actually saw a quote from Kirk Ferentz, the Iowa coach. They're playing Michigan in the Big Ten championship game, and everyone is just assuming because they score 5 points a game that they will lose one way or the other to Michigan. And but his quote was, "I also think it would be funny if we defeat them this weekend." So which I thought was great because the whole world would think it's funny if they lose to them. And he even admitted that it was like I acknowledge the outside world. Every once in a while, you get the acknowledgement of the outside world. We had that with Mike McDaniel earlier this year when they went to Germany, and he goes, "Let me lay it out for you. If we go and beat the Chiefs, everyone's going to anoint us Super Bowl champions, and if we lose, you're going to tell us we can't beat a good team." I already know what the situation is, and it was Kirk Ferentz truth telling I know what you're saying about us. If we lose this game, it's expected, but if we win it, it's actually funny, right? Like, so I get it. Like I totally get it. That's true. Here's the thing though. Even if they do that, I actually don't see a path for Ohio State to get in because Michigan beat Ohio State. So if a Big Ten team is going to get in, it's going to be Michigan. I do think if Iowa defeats them, they will get jobbed and they will get taken out, like entirely.
Yeah, of course.
I don't think so. I actually believe there will be no Big Ten team in if Michigan loses. Like I don't see a path for that because you can't put Ohio State over them. Like you can't do that,
right? Especially because they
so
lost.
I actually see zero path for Ohio State getting into the playoff. I think they're the odd man out, no matter how this weekend shakes out.
Yeah.
Unless because here's the thing: if Oregon beats Washington, Oregon's going to get in. If Oregon loses, Washington's going to stay, period. If Georgia beats Alabama, they're in. If Georgia loses to Alabama, I think they both get in, Alabama and Georgia. That's what I think will happen. That's what I think will be on the line. Because how are you going to take Georgia out by losing to Alabama in the SEC championship game, unless, to your point, somehow it's a blowout, which feels very unlikely to be the case, like extremely unlikely. But let's just say Alabama pulls out a 27-24 win or something, like kicks a game-winning field goal at the buzzer. They're both going to be in the playoff after that. I think both of them will be in the playoffs. In fact, I think that's where Florida State will get knocked out, is if Alabama plays a really close game with Georgia, it might knock them out. I don't see a path for Ohio State at all. I think the Pac-12 winner this weekend is going to be in, whether it's Oregon or Washington. I think Georgia's in no matter what, unless they get blown out. If they lose, I think Alabama and Georgia will both be in. I think Michigan's in with a win, and I think no Big Ten team is in if they lose. So this is a heck of a weekend, and this is really honestly one of the I don't think I remember it like this in a long time because I haven't even mentioned Texas yet. Texas beat Alabama. If they were to win the Big 12 championship game, I would argue they should go in over an undefeated Florida State team at this point. So let's see how this all plays out this weekend.
Yeah, agree.
All right, take a quick break. Bram and Callow, ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. So I watched a good amount of the Heat and Bucks last night because we didn't have any locals on TV. And it turned out to be a great game and, kind of a preview possibly again of a playoff matchup. And you know me, they're my second favorite team, the Heat. I like watching them play. Archer kind of likes Giannis a little bit. So we were kind of up in each other's face last night watching a basketball game that neither one of us really should have a rooting interest in. But that was actually refreshing as just generational sports fans yelling at one another. He was like pumped about Dame time and I was pumped about Heat culture, baby. So we were up in each other's face. And then Ernie Johnson breaks in the middle of the game. and starts explaining something that I didn't realize was happening last night, because the round robin part of this in-season tournament is coming to an end. And I didn't realize this, and it's amazing because for a living, I talk about sports, and I had no idea that point differential was going to be a big deal for this thing, but it is. And last night, Ernie breaks in and he's showing a score from the Knicks game, and the Knicks are blowing out the Hornets on purpose because they have to. They have no choice. Yes. If they don't blow them out by a certain amount of points, they aren't going to advance. And for anyone who's going, see, no one really cares about this, they do, because they put money on the line. So they have, everybody's going to get $500,000 if you win this thing. So people are trying. So in the end, that's a good thing. People are trying in games, but some of the unintended consequences is what occurred last night, which was some of the things were ridiculous. Josh Hart said after the game where the Knicks beat the Hornets 115-91 and LaMelo's not playing because he got hurt, he said this, quote, "It was interesting. I didn't really like it. We were focused at first just about winning. The last couple of minutes, though, it feels weird. At a certain point, you're chasing points, so it messed with the integrity of the game." Like the Knicks, the Cavaliers finished group play at 3-1, but the Cavs' point differential wasn't large enough to advance to the quarterfinals, but they tried. Donovan Mitchell was in at the last few minutes of the game, of a game that they blew out Atlanta. Atlanta pulled all their starters with 4 minutes left in the game, but Cleveland put all of their guys back in because they had to try to run up the score at the end of the game.
I mean, this is going as planned, or at least how I thought it was going to be as planned. The guys didn't know the rules, so they're just learning on the fly. I will say, though, for next time,
the teams were aware. Yeah. The teams were aware of this. It just put these teams in an awkward position. So, the Celtics killed the Bulls last night, but they were fouling Andre Drummond on purpose in a game they were up by 30 in the fourth quarter, and Jason Tatum played the final 10 minutes, as did all the starters, even though they were up 29 entering the fourth quarter, because they had to make sure they won by a certain amount last night to advance.
And that's what I'm getting at, though. The Wizards, what was their first tournament game? Do you remember? It was against
Charlotte, I think.
Oh yeah, Charlotte. Yeah, you're right. Because they beat Charlotte and then they lost to them in the tournament game.
Yeah.
I think what's going to happen now, though, is everyone's going to go, "Oh, maybe I should watch this from the start and play like this," because I didn't know that was the case watching the first game. Who knew? Right. This is what I'm getting at. Oh, we're doing this when it's the last week of these tournament games, and I didn't know about it until right now. Now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I should have been paying more attention to this at the beginning and what teams were and were not, benching their starters or not scoring as much or whatever. Okay, I will stick tap the NBA here. We have our first instance of, oh, I should probably pay attention to this more at the start, not at the end, which is what's happening right now in front of our faces. For year one, I will say they've already got kind of a little bit of intrigue going into next year.
So Joe Mazzulla, coach of the Celtics, middle of the fourth quarter, pulled aside Billy Donovan, coach of the Bulls, to explain to him why he was running up the score on him.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Jaylen Brown admitted, afterwards, you got to respect your opponents. He described it as a little unusual that they had to do what they were doing last night. So it's unintended consequences that this happened. So earlier today, I heard Windhorst was on with Carlin and Joe. Yeah. And Windhorst was like, this isn't complicated. It's just it wasn't clearly disseminated very well publicly, because this is why everybody was so confused last night. It's because it's very simple. If you won head-to-head matchups, then you moved on. But if you split them, it came down to point differential. And he said, this is what European soccer's been doing forever in Champions League or all these other places where you play two matches and it's goal differential. To which I would just want to say back to him, this isn't Europe, and basketball is not soccer. And winning a game 4-0 and then losing a game 2-1, I get it. But winning a game 130 to 125 and then winning and losing another game 125 to 90, that's not the same thing. And when you end up putting out how in the world could you make it akin to one another when the Hawks are down by a ton and they just pull everybody out because they can't win and they don't want anybody to get hurt, and the other team puts all their starters in to run up the score? How's that the same as European soccer's model? It isn't. It's not even remotely close to comparable whatsoever, which is why this point differential thing doesn't really make any sense in basketball. It's too easy to score in basketball. It's hard to score in soccer, which is why goal differential matters. You could score 130 points if the other team takes all their starters out. Like, of course you can. So that's why I didn't like it. And when I heard the explanations of, well, they got to have a tie break, I hear you, but point differential in basketball is not akin to goal differential in soccer. It's not even close to the same thing. It's easy to score in basketball. It's not easy to score in soccer. Like, that's why goal differential matters there. Like, one, the players didn't know much about what this was. Two, it's just a mechanism to try to get people viewing. Three, and the one good thing that I actually think came out of it was stars were playing last night in games at moments when they don't typically play. Right. And frankly, like that Heat-Bucks game really actually felt like it had an edge to it, which is why I was totally into it. It felt like a post-All-Star game or playoff game. It had that kind of intensity to it. That's what I love about NBA basketball, and that's what's lost at this time of year, and they're feeling it because between load management and stars taking nights off, or just honestly, like the efforts just kind of aren't there this early in the season because the games just kind of don't matter enough. And even the good matchups don't resonate well. If this helps make them play harder, I'm all for this. But point differential, if you had to explain it to your core fans and to the players what was going on, you've done a really poor job. And frankly, I don't think it applies in this sport. Like, I really don't. Like, you have to win by 40 now. And well, that's going to depend on the other team taking part in allowing you to win by 40.
Yeah, but no.
That's what I don't like about it.
This is year one of this. We were going to get this. So just because they didn't know the rules doesn't mean it's wrong. And here's the thing, too. If that means everyone's going to play harder starting next year. Like, I'm fine with this.
Starting next year.
Yeah,
it is ridiculous that these teams clearly didn't understand it.
It's the
league. They got into something that they didn't even understand, really.
The league rushed this. It's because they want the new TV deal, so they need the regular season. And so this was cobbled together. Like, the fact that this was announced and put in place in less than a year tells you everything you need to know, and that nobody was really prepared for it. And of course they didn't educate the players, or if they did educate the players, they weren't paying attention to it. Now, though, they have no excuse next year about the whole point differential thing. And let's be honest here, too. You're to get bad teams like the Wizards that weren't trying down the stretch when they were getting blown out. Now, all of a sudden, maybe there is a shred of pride that they play hard down the stretch, and these games are competitive. So we'll see.
I mean, but like, okay, so the Wizards, who are bad, and they're in this round robin thing, and they're taking on somebody who's good, and the Wizards are losing big because that team's trying to defeat them. And so what, the Wizards are now supposed to play all their guys for what? Sanctity of the event that actually doesn't matter. It's just a pot of money. It's not really a championship.
No, but same thing,
you know
though.
what I mean? Like that's the thing. Like, this isn't Champions League. It's like they want it to be Champions League. It's not. You know, like that's not what this is. These are regular season games with a pot of money attached to them. That's what it is.
That's the difference, though. This is the end of it right now. I bet you it would have happened differently if they did realize it was point differential. I bet you they would have played harder down the stretch in the first games. That's what I'm getting at here. I don't think
I would buy point differential in a baseball tournament where runs are hard to come by, or football for that matter, where touchdowns and points are actually hard to come by. Not in basketball. It's too easy to score in that game.
But everybody's it's a level playing field, though. That's what I don't understand here. Everybody's playing. Like, it's not like you've got bad teams only playing against good teams, or good teams playing against only good teams. It's the same thing. I
don't know. Champions League is best of leagues playing one another, and it's cross league, which is totally different, right? Like these teams don't play each other. Like, they're playing each other, and that's what makes that event special. And they do the goal differential thing because it matters and it's hard to score. These teams are just playing regular season games. They're all in the same league. Like, I don't know. To me, it's like, I hear you, and it is year one, and everything that changes like this is always wonky in year one. But like, this feels, I think you used the right word, rushed.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other thing they got to get rid of, those courts are hard to look at.
Terrible. Yeah, they're terrible. That heat court is
you want to do something put something at center court that denotes in-season tournament. Yeah. Don't paint the whole court a color that makes me avert my eyes away from the screen, for crying out loud. Yep. All right, let me take a quick break. Bram wants to show you ESPN 630 Sports Capital. All right, welcome back. Bram wants to show you ESPN 630 Sports Capital. I am at home today trying to get over a head cold to get ready for the game this weekend, the Commanders and the Dolphins, and I just want to feel better. And I don't want to expose Callow to anything he doesn't need to be exposed to, because apparently our whole area is being exposed to something.
Right.
So hopefully everybody out there who's sick, and those who are worse, because I've heard our hospitals have had a lot of people go to the ER. I've read a lot of reports locally. Hopefully everybody's feeling better and we get through whatever wave of whatever viruses are running through our region. So everybody feel better. Feel better, guys. Feel better. News of the day. News of the day, I think, is this, and I think it's very complicated and very interesting. Mark Cuban announcing that he is selling a controlling stake of the Dallas Mavericks to the heiress of the Las Vegas Sands, which is a major casino group based mainly in Las Vegas. He is getting $2 billion, according to the reports, $2 billion to sell a majority stake of the team, but for now, he will remain what they call the governor and will make all basketball decisions, which doesn't totally make a lot of sense, right? Like, doesn't totally make a lot of sense to do that. The valuation puts the team at about $3.8 billion, which is right behind what the Suns sold for. And so that happened, right? So a lot of questions opened up immediately. One, him selling out of the Mavericks, which he didn't do entirely and is still in control of the day-to-day operations, but isn't the majority owner any longer. So how long is that going to last? I don't know. And in all likelihood, he is probably waiting out a couple of things to happen here before he sells the rest of it. So why would the Las Vegas Sands heiress want to buy the Dallas Mavericks? Well, the initial guess would be to move them to Las Vegas. Cuban says that's not happening, that's not why this happened. And in fact, it's the opposite. It's to build the Dallas Mavericks are part of some new Las Vegas Sands multiplex casino in Dallas, and that they're going to be part of this. Here's the big problem with that. That's not legal
yet. I think that's a caveat here, is that maybe this is a first door to be knocked down to get somebody involved and directly in the city to maybe start, knocking on some of those politicians' doors to maybe get that started.
Those doors have already been knocked on, because I'll tell you about that. So earlier this year, before the elections this year, off year wasn't a big one in Texas, but in this off year election, there were some others. Texas didn't have a big off year election. Anyway, back in the spring, there were proposals to expand gaming in the state. There are no casinos in the state of Texas. There might be potentially on a native reservation, but they don't have an MGM National Harbor situation. It's not legal there. If you wanted to go to a casino in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you'd have to drive to Oklahoma. So it's not legal there yet. But their House committee did advance a couple of proposals to potentially legalize it. Guess who backed it? The Las Vegas Sands Corporation. So they were lobbying all the politicians to push through legislation that would legalize gambling in the state. And honestly, considering how many states have legalized it, they are behind the curve. But in more red states and more conservative states, they've been slower just in general to legalize this. Anyway, it's now on the table, but it hasn't been approved yet. So you could look at this one of two ways. And I think that this is an incredible leverage point, that what they just did, actually. This signals to me that it is going to be legalized, that those bills are going to move forward and they are going to get what they want, which is they're going to be the primary owner of the Mavericks, and they bought it not to take over the team, but to be able to build a resort, and maybe multiple resorts in the state of Texas, but definitively in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And the Mavericks are going to be part of that resort. They're going to have, you think Vegas is going to have their own team. The Mavericks are going to have their own casino, is basically what's going to happen, right? That's what we think is going to happen. Or if you do not pass this, we will move this team out of Dallas. That's what I think is happening here. I think that the goal is to keep the Mavericks there, but to build a Las Vegas-style resort in Dallas, first of its kind, and the Mavericks are the anchor of the whole thing, outside of the gambling. But like, the Mavericks arena is going to be part of this complex that they build, and therefore why they invested in it. But what's hanging over the legislature's head now is, oh, by the way, if you don't approve this and you don't actually legalize it and you don't allow us to build what we want to build, we're going to take this team and move it to Vegas. Watch.
The problem with that, though, is there's no justification, and I think there would be some kind of lawsuit, because what would happen is with every team that moves, there is a distinct reason why. It's a new stadium, its attendance is down, it's they're moving to a more robust area. We've talked about it before. Dallas specifically is one of the fastest growing cities in America.
Dallas is on pace to become the number 3 market in the country within the next 10 years in terms of population size.
And I get it. Like, maybe they are going to threat, but I bet you those politicians would push back and go, we dare you to try to move from a city that is on pace to be one of the biggest in the country and give us a good reason for it, or else you're going to have a lawsuit on your hands of why you're moving. And then all of a sudden it opens up a world of possibilities that Adam Silver has to deal with. I don't see that happening. I just think this is a bolster.
It's a heck of a scare tactic, though.
I'd agree. I agree with you on that.
The majority owner, and that's agreed upon by the NBA, the majority owner of the team is a casino magnate.
Right.
If the casino magnate isn't going to get the casino in Texas, then guess what they're going to do? They're going to move the team where they can have the casino attached. That's what's happening.
The problem is what I'm getting at here is the second part of all of this is it would be a situation where they're moving a team from a robust area that gets good attendance, by the way, too. It's not like Mavs fans don't show up.
Oh, they should never move. That's obvious. They should never move.
I know, and that's what I'm getting at here in the second point is, okay, then who's going to be the other team that moves to Dallas? Because somebody's going to go, you're going to leave that space wide open? Okay, we'll go ahead and move our team there. And I don't know who that would be. Would that be like New Orleans or Charlotte, like one of those new, quote unquote, newer teams? Would that be one of them? Would that be, I don't know, Sacramento or something like that? I don't know who that team would be, but I do know one owner would definitely go, you're going to leave that hole open with a community that really wants a basketball team and really comes out and supports them? I think that's a slippery slope, because I think then some other market goes, oh, we're way better off going to that market than sticking around with whatever we've got here. So I'm just saying it's a threat, but both of them seem to have ammo of why wouldn't go the other way. My thing is, if this is going to be one of the biggest cities in America, why wouldn't you have a luxury resort / casino / area where you can do that when every other state not every other, but you know what I mean? Majority of other states. That's the state of
Texas. They haven't legalized it. That's the point. They haven't legalized it.
This is just a get with the times type move. It's got to be a come work with us. We'll build this crazy thing, and then people are going to come here to come gamble and do all this other stuff. And shoot, I bet you they could even be saying to Texas, you don't have to legalize everything everywhere. You could legalize the gambling apps, and you could do that from everywhere, but you could legalize just not unlike Vegas, legalize the card games and slot machines and make it so it's only in Dallas, or only in Dallas and Austin, or Dallas, Austin, and Houston. Maybe you want to make it only in the major cities to get people to go.
That's the other problem.
That could be the other thing.
Tillman Fertitta, who owns the Rockets and was interested in buying the Commanders, but owns the Houston Rockets, his background is he owns the Golden Nugget Casino.
Right. So there you go. I mean, that could very well be what it's going to be then.
So there's no way that they're going to approve in the state of Texas. They're not going to approve the new owners of the Mavericks, who are the Las Vegas Sands Corporation, a casino, and not give Fertitta the same thing in Houston.
That's what I'm
and there's a Golden Nugget that's a hub of the Rockets arena, which is what's going to happen. And then the Spurs are going to have to figure it out. And they're going to have to put something in San Antonio, or what I have felt all along, and I hate to say this because I don't want to move anybody, but it's not that far away. I actually think that team should move to Austin personally, and maybe even play in both cities, because they're only about an hour apart from one another. But the burgeoning population growth in Texas is occurring in the city of Austin. And if they put up a brand new whatever type of arena attached to a gaming complex there, that's where that team ought to play.
Right. No,
that's what I think.
And I guess that's what I'm getting at here, though, is maybe it's some kind of rule, too, where maybe to have one of these hubs, you have to have a professional sports team. So that would mean Dallas, Arlington, Houston, San Antonio. Maybe that does move San Antonio to Austin. Maybe that's the workaround here. Maybe that's kind of what they could propose. Because here's what I'm getting at here too, is everybody can kind of gamble where they want, but there's still nothing like Las Vegas, right? Like when we talk about it all the time here.
Yeah, they understand it. It's the entertainment capital of the world.
But now, if you're Texas, your state is so effing big and there's so many people. Now, all of a sudden, if you have multiple hubs, people will go to those cities specifically to go to your resorts and restaurants and gamble and all of that. Maybe they're going to pump it up as that. And then, of course, like everywhere else, you got airports in all those cities too. So maybe it becomes easier to go to Dallas to go get your, your weekend of gambling with your buddies or whatever you want to do. I could maybe see that being the push here of, hey, we're losing money, people traveling anyways. Why don't we just make our own little hubs here? And it kind of folds in all of the locals too if we have one for each city, and then all of a sudden we're all making money hand over
right.
fist.
But the Pandora's box that gets opened is the same thing that happened when the DC City Council and Muriel Bowser immediately stated once ownership changed with the Commanders, oh, by the way, RFK's back on the table. We want you back here. What happened? The Lerner family and the Leotis family immediately raised their hands and said, we want public money now.
Yeah.
We're your partners. We want it now. What do you think is going to happen when Jerry Jones finds out that gambling's legalized? Oh, he wants a casino at AT&T Stadium too. Like, you're not just going to give that to the Dallas Mavericks. You're going to give that to us too. So this is, and they have to know this. The second they legalize this, every single person who has competing interests are going to raise their hand and expect to be appeased on all of this. That's probably going to have to happen.
That's what I'm getting at. That's what would happen. They wouldn't just make it only for the Mavericks or the Rockets or whatever. They would maybe.
There's no chance.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, though. Like, I think that's why it could happen, though, if they have it with the caveat of, hey, if you have a major sports stadium, you're allowed to do this, or if you're allowed to back it if you are in one of those major cities. Like, I could definitely see that happen.
Honestly, I feel like the same thing's going to happen like it had here. The second RFK got back on the table, Leontis played some hardball with them. Right. If you believe the reporting, that he asked for $600 million, over a period of time to improve Capital One Arena, with the caveat of, or I will split these teams and build a new arena in Virginia, or move both of them to Virginia. Whether you believe all that's going to happen or not, that's some serious hardball. You don't think Jerry Jones just watched Mark Cuban sold the controlling interest of the Mavericks to a casino magnate and isn't calling up his politicians who he's had partnerships with for eons and go, you're not giving it to them first. We're the Dallas Cowboys. You're going to talk to us first about all this stuff. So watch, this signaled to me that they're going to legalize it, and now everybody's getting in line to take advantage of it. Cuban not selling all of the team is his understanding of, I'm selling it for at this number now to get them involved to make this all happen, knowing that when they build the new stadium and have this, I'll sell out of the rest of it at a much higher value. That's what he's doing. I saw a couple other people point out there and say, Cuban is one of his major strengths throughout his career has been not just building things that are worth a lot of money, but getting out of them before their bubbles burst. He got out of certain spaces like broadcast.com and stuff like that before they took a tumble the other direction. He seems to know when to get out. And there were some people who wrote in some business articles that I kind of believe a little bit, where they're like, I don't just believe him when he says he wants to get out to be with his family or whatever he says he's going to do. He might see the values of the NBA team skyrocketing right now, believes a bubble is occurring, and is getting out while the getting's good. And that's why he's doing what he's doing. But it's a profound move. He gets the casino magnate in now as the controlling owner. They've been lobbying the legislature to make this happen in Texas. Now they're a controlling owner. They're set up to be ready to roll, to build whatever it is they want to build at, the highest level of resort in Dallas when this thing essentially gets legalized, which is, I guess, what the expectation is. Once that happens, their value of the team is going to go up exponentially. New arena, resort complex. Not many teams will have that. Huge market. So he's going to sell the rest of the interest in the team probably to them at that point at a higher value and get out of it. The other side of it is, do the team values continually go up? And maybe he's surmising a little bit they don't. So that's it. That's all along with the Commanders thing. When everyone said they won't get this number, I kept saying they will, because they've decided they will. At some point, these numbers do stop making sense. And maybe Cuban is seeing that a little bit here. He's going, you know what? I'm going to get out of this thing before the bubble bursts. I'll always make a lot of money, and an NBA team will always be worth a lot, but it will never be worth what it's worth right now. I'm watching all of our rights fees go to broadcast television. There's a lot of things that are going bust. Everybody's turning to gambling because they feel like they have to. I don't know. Maybe he's onto something here, that NBA teams aren't going to be worth what everyone thinks they're going to be worth into the future, and he's just getting out because he's done this before, getting out when the getting's good.
It could also just be the simple fact of, we've heard Ted talk about this with both of the Caps and the Wizards about the operating costs now of franchise. Like, I took it with a grain of salt when Ted was talking about it to the Post, but he did make a point of, just because the Caps are worth $900 million doesn't mean I have $900 million. I still need to run the arena, still need to pay the players, still need to take care of everything. Maybe Cuban, I think it could be a simple, I'm with what your theory is here, that he could sell it at a later date, but maybe for Cuban, maybe he was approached and maybe he likes this of, oh, you mean I don't have to write all these checks anymore, but I still get to make all the decisions? I still get to kind of shape the roster? I still get to act the way I get to act, and I don't have to, put up all this capital, and I'm going to put $2.5 billion in my pocket at the same time? Let's be honest here, that's kind of a good deal, too, when you think about it, and how some of these operating costs that have been openly complained about with some teams, like I said, with Ted or whatever, it could be as simple as that. I'm with you. He's not going to sell all of it because he still wants to be involved with the team, clearly, and he still sits 3 rows up and yells at the refs and does what he does. But maybe it's as simple as, oh, you want to own a sports team? Great. I still kind of want to shape the roster and stuff. So if, you and I just kind of scratch my back, I scratch yours, I still kind of want to be involved in the actual sports thing, and you just want to see the profits roll in and you want to deal with payroll now, have at it. I think that could also be a part of all of this. Let's be honest here, too. These guys, these billionaires, are not as flush with actual cash. Look what happened with the Commanders.
Look what happened with Ted.
20 people or whatever to buy the Commanders, so it was, ridiculous.
Listen, I don't love that our local team did a deal with the Qatari government. But to his point of when he talked about it, and I didn't love his answers in all of it, but there were a couple that were pointed to where he basically insinuated what you're insinuating, which is we need more money to operate these things differently. And all it's leading to is there are going to be different people than you're accustomed to running these things. We've had oligarchs and Saudi money running European soccer for a long time now. We have now suddenly major gambling operators are using their money to purchase franchises. I think the Raiders are ripe to be taken by, the reason why they're sitting there is I think they're remember all those executives rolled out of there? We never really knew what was going on. I think those gambling operators are waiting at some point for the NFL to let them take over the Las Vegas Raiders. We now have public investment funds from Middle Eastern countries investing heavily into all of these sports. I think we need to get accustomed to the fact that ownership of these organizations is not going to be whatever we used to think it was. It took Josh Harris to get to 20 people to put a group together to raise enough money to buy this organization, this one here. And we have what is not a traditional ownership group, but it's more traditional in the sense of what we're hearing in these other leagues and what is happening. So this is not a trend. This is what's going on. And I think Cuban is partially going, I'm not going to be able to compete. The only real way for me to end up ultimately competing is to be flush with cash in a modern way. So I got 2 choices here: sovereign wealth, or major hedge fund money, or casino. And it's an interesting bet because it's not legal there. It signals it's going to be,
right.
So why would they buy the Mavericks unless it was going to be? Or it's they got the sledgehammer over top of the legislature now. If you don't want to see the Dallas Mavericks move out of here, you better legalize gambling, because that's why we bought and are going to operate this team at this number, and we're going to build you a world-class resort. It's going to be better than anything else anybody else has because we're the Las Vegas Sands Corporation. We're going to build you the best thing you could possibly have here. So we'll see. We'll see. This is all trending in ways that make me uncomfortable, frankly. But that's that. The other last one was, I know a lot of people surmised Cuban was doing this, and then he also announced he's not going to be on Shark Tank anymore. Yes. I didn't realize he'd been on it for 15 years, but he has been. And everyone surmised that because he's been kind of politically oriented, that he might run for president, and he shot that down immediately. And I don't believe he's doing that. I don't think he's doing that, but I don't know. Maybe he's lying. Maybe he is. I don't know. Maybe.
I mean, the other part about all this too, though, is I do think individuals like him don't normally go this route, but at some point, you do actually want to live a little bit more. And look, with the whole Shark Tank thing too, I thought it was funny. I didn't even really know there were new episodes of that thing on still, but guess what? It's on replays on a million different channels. And if you find yourself at a hotel, I'm sure you do it too. You find it and you're like, oh, Shark Tank's on. I'll just put this on in the background for a couple hours. He might even go, you know what? I don't really need to do any new ones anymore because those reruns have been airing for how many years, and that's how people watch the show anyways. So I could see that also being the case. I mean, look, I think the most simple thing that we haven't really talked about, though, is maybe his all just, it's getting to be a little much for him. He is getting up there, in age. I mean, he's not super old by any means, but I don't know. Maybe it's just taking a step back. I wouldn't shock me if just a human being wanted to do that. And as I said, too, he still gets to do what he does at Mavs games, and that's sit and watch and yell at the refs and, be buddy-buddy with the players and also run the team. I think that's what he likes the most. And if he's taking his capital and getting more money in his pocket, more cash in his pocket, it's the best of both worlds, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so.